Okay. All right. So we're live now. Um, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar of 2025. Today we'll be talking about farming for the future, and I am sure that some of you have heard about this phrase. It may not be uh, it may not be too popular. It also may not be very well uh, popularized or very well out there. But it's a really important topic to us at Yemet, and we're happy to join in the conversation today. I'll be a moderator for today. My name is Udo, as some of you know. And at Yemet, we are providing a holistic solution to empower smallholder farmers. We have micro insurance that protects farmers from unpredictable risk. We also have something that we recently introduced, which is a carbon credit program that rewards farmers for sustainable agricultural practices. And also, we connect farmers through market linkages where farmers can have direct access to buyers so that they can get better profitability from the efforts of their farming. And this webinar series has pretty much come to stay. So far, this is the fourth one that we're having since we started sometime late last year, and this is the first for the year. And we're really excited to kickstart this particular conversation on these first webinar for 2025. So today, we have an amazing guest, which I have the absolute pleasure of introducing. Her name is Audrey Estako, and she's the founder of Seven's Sake. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. Audrey, you can please let me know if I'm pronouncing that right. And Audrey is the founder of Seven Take, and she's also a climate tech innovator that is working to restore degraded landscapes, improve soil health, and support thousands of smallholder farmers within Ghana. And Audrey's work also focuses on turning biomass waste into organic soil amendment. And she also helps farmers to adopt climate smart solutions that increases their productivity. Audrey, we're really honored to have you join us here on this conversation today, where we'll be sharing around farming for the future. Um, Please, before I delve in, I'd want to just confirm if I did pronounce the name of your company right.
Right. It's a pleasure to be here, Udo. I think you were quite close. It's Seven Sake, but
Ah,
I will still accept it. As
okay.
some people say, Seven Sake, Seven Sake, Seven Sake. I mean,
You know,
we really appreciate.
I almost wanted to go for the second one, but I thought my brain just went for the first one. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm just going to let you perhaps share just briefly 1 or 2 minutes. Tell us about what Saban Sake actually does, what it means. That's the first time I'm hearing. I don't know if those are the combination of two words or, I mean, what does it actually mean? Is there a meaning to it? And if so, what does it mean? And how did you get into this field?
Got you, got you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. And for us to just exchange a lot of learnings. So I'm Audrey Estaco, and I am founder and regenerative agriculture lead at Sabon Sake. Sabon Sake is a word derived from the Hausa language, which is, I'm told, probably the second most widely spoken language on the African continent. And it
Mm-hmm.
means to make anew or transform, or generally to renew, right? And for us, we adopted that name because we intend to live up to the meaning of it, where we are transforming what people would term as waste, which should be seen as a resource,
Mm-hmm.
into value added products and service regenerative solutions that actually transform communities, livelihoods, and landscapes. Right. So, Sabun Sake really, whenever I am reminded of of um, of our mandate, immediately I go back to its meaning, right? And
Right.
that drives the work that we do across various landscapes in the region.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That's so profound to hear that it came from the Hausa language. I mean, considering that you are you originally Ghanaian? Most of your work is in Ghana. How
Mhm.
did you uh, come across or how did you adopt this name from a different language that maybe are you familiar with that language or how did that happen?
That's a obviously. I honestly think the answer is serendipity, but
Ah,
but really, like, we first of all wanted something that was African born or from Africa that could represent, the brand and where we're coming and starting from. Saki is also Japanese, to just
mhm.
so you know. So you have a lot of people in the
Yeah, I'm
north,
familiar.
global, exactly, global north, kind of also bonding with the name, so which is something we liked. But we definitely resonated with Sabansaki because first we felt it was Africa born, Africa made, and our intention was to really just find a name that actually represents the activities we do in
Mhm.
restoring degraded landscapes in Ghana and across. But I think the intention for what we do at Sabansaki, I would say, started from a nature and nurture perspective.
Mhm.
I'm very passionate about farming. I'm from such a background, and I have a lot of
Mhm.
enthusiasts and farmers practicing
Mhm.
farming as a side hustle and as the main thing. And I've also always appreciated where food is grown, how it's grown, and how to grow food. So for us, being able to transform the way we grow food means a lot to me, and I'm hoping that in what I think could be a food pandemic, we can equip and empower, everybody to be a farmer that is resilient enough against climate change, and also can grow their own food for self-reliance and self-sustainability.
Hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about your journey. Um, I think it's, I mean, throughout your experience working with farmers, perhaps just in Ghana, and maybe let's just get that out of the way. Do you only work at the moment, maybe with farmers in Ghana, or you perhaps have moved to other markets or other regions of the continent?
Right. So Ghana's been our beachhead market for a
Hmm.
couple of years now because there's a lot of work to be done here. But
Right.
we've kind of piloted and tapped into the sub-Saharan region and also
Mm-hmm.
in the Caribbean. Either through capacity building, where we're training farmers how to turn their residues into biochar or good organic soil amendments, down to physical demonstrations of what it takes to actually grow food sustainably. What does it mean to be regenerative in your food production? So it's not just Ghana, but Ghana's been a beachhead, and we've been using that as a solid case study to prepare for our launch and scale across specific African countries in the coming years.
Brilliant. And throughout all of this work, what has been the most rewarding and also the most challenging aspect?
Wow, that's a very tough question for me, but I love what I do, and I think at Seven Sake we encourage everybody to really embody. the mission and the vision. I wake up feeling excited, even though sometimes it is tiring because there's so much you want to do in a very
Right.
short limited time, and I'm sure you feel the same way at Yemet,
Right.
building
Every
Yemet
day.
as well.
Every
You
day.
know, but I would say that um, I think one of the most rewarding moments for me is just being able to execute on our objectives, and primarily that has to do with farmers being able to grow food sustainably and understand the concepts and the knowledge and the skill sets, and apply it to how they grow food. So um, I mean, we had a recent testimony of how a farmer in a specific region in Ghana had moved from having 7 bags of maize to quadrupling that, right? After learning how to regeneratively
Mm-hmm.
um, grow his maize, right? And then adopt and also kind of make his own biochar and biochar fertilizer. We were very excited about that. Waking up to that news means that um, we're doing something right, and there's more that we can do. I think some of the challenges really, but we see them as opportunities, right?
Right.
Where we can advance technology,
Mm-hmm.
um, innovate around the challenges. So for us, some of the challenges that we definitely deem as opportunity has been, how do we democratize finance for smallholder farmers, right? Because especially specifically with climate finance, they're getting just about 2%. And that's ridiculous, knowing that, farmers they are the pillars in which and to which we're able to exist, or be, how do I call it, um, have a solid, good, healthy well-being. Right, we need food on our plates to actually have the energy we need to work. So for me, some of the challenges that we see as opportunities, how do we get farmers to be eligible to tap into carbon market opportunities, climate financing opportunities? How do we prepare them, their profile, in a way that gets them and secures them the financing to actually grow more food, um, battle or tackle climate change more efficiently, right? So for us, um, we've already started innovating around that and looking at how are soon to launch a platform. Geoterra would be able to map out a lot of our regenerative farmer networks, and especially those adopting and applying such regenerative practices like minimizing soil disturbance, using organic fertilizer, being very intentional about what they put in the earth to grow food. How do we map them to the right organizations that are willing to support such farmers and incentivize them to either grow food for themselves, and then also how are we able to measure the carbon sequestration potential that
Right.
they are actually delivering on? So it's quite a lot of things, but I'm super excited whenever I'm on the field, and I'm starting to see that the challenges farmers face, if we're able to collaborate, especially a lot of the climate tech entrepreneurs and agripreneurs in the space, if we're able to collaborate, this will not be far-reaching. Farmers would
Right.
be the wealthy and respected human beings that they should be, and we'll all be
Right.
farmers.
Right. Trust me, like, I mean, just listening to you is quite refreshing because trust me, I resonate with every single thing that you just mentioned now, and it's really exciting to hear that. I mean, there's also like a partner in progress who's also like, innovating around the same thing, being passionate about the same thing. I mean, facing the same challenges, excited about the rewards of it. It's just super refreshing. I have to tell you. Okay, so I mean, your work is at the forefront of regenerative agriculture. But then, you have to break that down to farmers, right? When you have these conversations with farmers about adopting, some of these practices that you've already started to adopt, what do you think is their biggest concerns? and how are you planning to address that, or how are you already addressing it?
When we talk about regenerative agriculture to farmers, first of all, we let them know this is not a new thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not new to them. It's just probably new terminology and
Right.
jargons
Mm-hmm.
being thrown at them. So, but then what we ask is that if they could throw their mind back to their forefathers, their ancestors, and how they worked with nature, right, to grow the food that they are currently growing or that they did grow in the years before, such that they didn't have a dependency on synthetic fertilizer, first of all. They probably didn't even know what that meant, but anytime they threw tomato seeds or pepper seeds, it
Mm-hmm.
flourished, right? They were sure of they were integrating their livestocks, in their fields, and that was the organic manure that they needed to keep the soil very moist and biodiversity enriched to actually grow the things that they do. Right? They use less pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their ability to harvest rainwater, right, and reduce the use of fresh water and
Mm-hmm.
other finite resources was a skill set that they incorporated in their farming, right? So for me, I just kind of start off with that case study and say, look, we're starting off and we're just going back to working with nature. And in Ghanaian parlance is something called sankofa. I think where you go back and pick up what you've been told or heard.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I got that right, but that's what I
Yeah,
know it to be.
yeah, I relate.
So we started with breaking that down that way, and I think in terms of the kind of solutions we're deploying in that sense, we're currently harnessing the power of waste, which should be called a resource or known as a resource in biomass generating farming communities, and especially those that are climate vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
We map that out, and then we, in a cluster model, aggregate the kind of waste that is being churned out, which is
Mm-hmm.
either openly dumped or openly burnt, right? Obviously, we know the impact around increasing greenhouse gas emissions when
Right.
biomass waste or waste in general is exposed or
To
burnt.
the atmosphere. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we transform that using clean technology that is specifically biochar technology, which enables us create more of a stable form of carbon, which then which is a organic soil amendment, right? Which we are able to supply, produce, and distribute, right? And then that allows us to increase the accessibility and availability of organic fertilizer, which is in huge demand and which is in which has a shortage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Across not just Ghana but the region.
Right.
So that's one way we do this: create more regenerative soil solutions. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that is so key, or the glue that binds all the innovative regenerative solutions that we are coming up with, is the aspect of capacity building. For
Mm-hmm.
us, we feel that farmers should be at the forefront of that. So now, the way we intend to transform or create the change we want to see is by letting the farmers lead. So when we do the trainings, it's to create more ambassadors that actually start to be at the helm of affairs to actually train and share the knowledge with other farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So creating some sort of regenerative farmer network, RFN, which is what we call it, that has a group of farmers that are equipped about what is climate change, what does it mean to work with nature, restore soil health, and actually utilize waste, which should be seen as a resource, into value-added products to enable the sustainable production of our food systems. So that's what's happening now. I think the second aspect around regeneration um, we're looking at is how do we get farmers to have access to knowledge in a digital way, right? Regenerative agricultural knowledge at their fingertips in their local languages,
Mhm.
that encourages them to build soil capital and create more healthy soils and reduce emissions at the farm level, right? So we're currently looking at a system that allows them to receive such information on demand and in local languages that would help boost their knowledge bank
Mhm.
around regenerative agriculture and keep them more in tune with what it takes to actually tackle the climate crisis. So a
Mhm.
number of things here and there, but I think the last and also most important thing would be how to really conserve water, right, and build drought resilience. Um, we've been looking at how can farmers adopt simple rainwater harvesting techniques, how they're
Mhm.
able to create swales in their landscapes, how they're able to utilize biochar to retain more moisture and nutrients for their soils. And these are simple things and techniques that we feel should be on the fingertips of farmers,
Mhm.
um, and should be applied with the tools that they use when they go to the farm.
Awesome. And so far, do you think that some of these water conservation techniques, are these things that could be easily adopted or integrated into the current conventional farming systems of the farmers that you work with?
Yes, I mean, honestly, I think climate change has really pushed everyone to in a corner. I wouldn't say of desperation, but wanting to actually think outside of the box and actually try things, right? So probably previously it would be very hard to get a conventional farmer who's very um strong headed on using maybe artificial fertilizer or just using a lot of fresh water in their produce. But now, even when you realize that there's water shortage, you're starting to look at the alternatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're more embracing of that. But then, like I said, the glue that binds all of this is capacity building, right? And farmers are people that believe in the seen as believing kind of movement. So if you're able to demonstrate to them how you're conserving water, um, they're more inclined to actually believe what you're saying and try it. So demonstrations and creating more soil living labs, as we like to call it, has been the way to really get them to at least flip the page and look at the alternatives aside what they've known in the conventional system that really harms the environment.
Hmm. Awesome. Well done. And I mean, just going back to what you said about the some of these farmers who I guess are already used to most of these archaic methods, and perhaps could be adamant in switching to adopting the new methods, as we'd like to call them, especially the ones who rely on chemical fertilizers for like really quick yields. How have you tried perhaps to shift their mindset? Yes, you mentioned capacity building, but I mean, in reality, in reality, what are you like? How? What are some of the capacity building methods that you're adopting to usually just change their minds and shift them towards now? How do you work with natural soil regeneration without it negatively impacting productivity or yields?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we started off with, first of all, creating alternatives,
Hmm.
right? So when you have nearly 100% of imported synthetic or artificial fertilizer in your country or in your landscape, and that's all you've known, it's very hard to do the switch or try. So we've harnessed the power of waste to create biochar, which is an organic soil amendment, and then gone a step further to create a biochar enhanced organic fertilizer, which has your standard NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, right? So first of all, having the alternative has been a very um, good market penetrating strategy that has allowed them to want to try or at least say, okay, I want to do this. But what is the alternative? Okay, here is the alternative: Sabonterra, which is our biochar enhanced organic fertilizer. I mean, the second part in terms of um, really getting them to want to try has been with capacity building, right? And really saturating their mindsets and through demonstration fields, through partnership and collaboration with other organizations that have farmers who are probably producing or who are actually producing for export. So they need those kind of farmers need they're heavily they heavily need to be compliant, right? And hence, if they don't use organic inputs or have the knowledge to grow food that is devoid of contaminants um, and climate harsh pesticides or inputs, then they lose out. So I'll say it's not been easy and it's not been hard. I think the real work has been reeling the farmer in, not only to see that there are alternatives and then there's power to actually make the change, but then I think the last aspect has to do with incentives. Really, how are we incentivizing farmers to actually do the change? Because we all know that um, they're very they're very focused, laser focused on yields, right? Because the more yields they get, the more money they get, right? So aside the inputs giving them the opportunity to boost yields, right, and the capacity building to also leverage on what resources are available to them and they could maximize benefits from. I think the incentives have been the third way, where now there's a carbon market opportunity that gets farmers who are actually adopting regenerative agriculture and green practices to actually be financed, right? Get more loans, have people pay premium for their produce, etc. And they find the market that they need that is willing to pay them for such sustainable practices. And the incentive there is what we are trying to capture and support them with by ensuring that these farmers have the evidence to back and show to the other organizations willing to incentivize them either through non-financial or financial means. And for us, that's been the way that we've been able to slowly but surely we'll get there, get them to actually transition or at least lean heavily towards more regen ag practices.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, that's really, very much covered a lot. But yes, when you talk about regenerative agriculture as you've been introducing to the farmers, and this is like it's a long-term journey. But say you find a new farmer who wants to join your farming network, as you mentioned the RFN. um, what would be like the possible steps that a farmer would take when they join, and how, and the process of transitioning as well? What would that look like? Can you walk us through that?
Okay, so I would probably I'll give a teaser or
Cool.
just a high level understanding, but with our soon to launch platform called Jotera, that would digitalize or like sum up the entire process well enough. But what we've been doing in a very manual but organic way has been to first visit the climate vulnerable communities, right? Do the talk with them, establish what we do and what we want to achieve, and then identify the farmers first that are willing, first of all, to actually who have been affected by the adverse impact of climate change, right? And are willing to actually have a portion of their farm, transition to regen act to actually see the impact and then eventually adopt the practice. So we've been what we've been doing is just mapping out, identifying, and then walking into the farmer. So we go to the farmers, right? And then by word of mouth, you have other farmers recommending other farmers to us, and then other farmers reaching out to us. And then from there, we identify which locations they are. And then when there's a training or capacity building opportunity, we actually go there, or we remind them to come for it, and then we build a network from there. So for now, we're going to them, and then they have access to our phone numbers, our website, our WhatsApp and other social media that they can reach out to. And then we do this in partnership with the assemblies, the district assemblies. So once we're within your community, you can, and we're not there probably 24/7, but then you can reach out to your district assembly department, agriculture department. Our numbers are there, and then they're able to do the liaison or connection for us to be able to get the farmers to receive the training they need, the knowledge building, and then join the network. So that's what it is, yes, at the moment. But with our platform currently underway, we should be able to support farmers to actually own up, or like show up by themselves instead of us going to them.
Going to
Yeah.
them, right? Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it only gets better, really. And maybe before we come back to now you digitalizing this work or the entire process, let me maybe just take a step back and ask around with the current farmers that you work with, and you've maybe perhaps the ones that's who have also transitioned fully to regenerative farming, or creating their own systems. Are there any specific crops or any like planting techniques that you figured out that have worked best in that process of transitioning to regenerative farming or creating like an entire system?
If I get your question right, I'd say I think every landscape has been different. But we've gone with like the staple crops, the cash crops. What is ubiquitous, what has high demand, what are farmers really looking at to have, yields or produce in the shortest couple of months, so that they can get their money, and they can also demonstrate the impact that we want to create. So from vegetables to grains, we've tried, down to cash crops like oil palm, cocoa, that are still very experimental, but then we focus mainly on the veggies and the staples and the cereals as well. Yeah, so that's been the focus. But aside that, we've also focused on just the restoration of degraded landscapes, not necessarily to grow food, but
Yeah.
to a forest, or look at reforestation, tree planting, and then also looking at mine affected landscapes. How do we reclaim that land back, right?
Rebuild.
Exactly. How do we do that? Rebuild, and just have more trees on it. How do we sequester more carbon? How do we improve the drought resilience of this landscape? And then eventually, farmers, after reclaiming it, can start to grow more food crops, etc. So it's been multifaceted, but then all in all, like farmers have been the center of our operations and the design for innovative solutions from Saban Sake.
Awesome. And so far, from those degraded lands that have been reforested or rebuilt, has
Mhm.
there been any track of soil fertility over
Mhm.
like the period that you've been doing that activity or those activities?
Yes. So honestly, most of them are primary data that we are currently keeping track of. We want to be able to do this even at an accelerated scale.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the soil samplings and stuff that we take, we're able to track the aftermath, like how the soil has improved in terms of carbon, in terms of proximate analysis, basically, in terms of droughts, in terms of nutrient levels. These have been our three major KPIs anytime we're on the landscapes. We do have primary data on some landscapes, obviously, and we intend to accelerate the more projects that we have, or the more projects we can undertake.
Awesome. And so far, with regards water conservation, how have you also been able to measure and track, I guess, water usage for irrigation?
What are you for irrigation? To be honest, that's we've not looked at irrigation. We've just looked at how we've been able to retain more water in the soils, and keep the land cool, and the water holding capacity
Mm-hmm.
using our waste to biochar soil solution. So in that stead, we do have like water holding capacity, how it's able to improve water by over 30%.
Mm-hmm.
How biochar alone is able to retain 6 times its weight water, and then basically understand the type of soil we're dealing with, whether it's clay, sandy, loamy, and then just assess what, when it rains, for instance, or if a farmer irrigates, um, how many times does the farmer need to water, right, compared to a landscape that is not doing so well and has to be irrigated 24/7. So that's been the aspect of water conservation, because our focus has been on the soil health aspect. But
Mm-hmm.
so far, in terms of water holding capacity, we've seen figures from over 30% after use of our waste to biochar products, and farmers being able to retain more water when the rain falls. Since over
Awesome.
95%, um, um, over 90% of farmers actually are dependent on rain-fed agriculture
Mm-hmm.
until, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, those are, I guess, good tracking numbers that you've just highlighted now. So back to your digital tool that's currently been built.
Mhm,
So, I mean, where did that inspiration come from? I'm talking because considering that I guess a huge chunk of the farmers within your
mhm,
network
mhm,
also maybe could be struggling with access to digital devices
mhm,
and technology at that level.
mhm,
So why do you think that still going forward with building this tool,
mhm,
I mean, the farmers that you serve will be able to adopt it and be able to
mhm,
use the tools?
mhm,
What are maybe some concerns that you maybe have?
mhm.
What are some of the risks, and how are you able to address those risks in terms of adoption of this digital tool? You called it Sabon Terra, right?
Ms. Jotera, actually, the digital platforms.
Okay.
Yes, coach.
Okay.
Um, that's a very good question, and I think that's something our team has been brainstorming about. But one thing that we know is it's very hard to create impact when you create impact or manage things if you don't measure it,
Right.
right? And for us, we see our the digital solution or digital platform as an opportunity to be able to measure the impact we're creating across various landscapes, right? That's the first thing. So we see that there is a need. It's imperative that this happens. And then the second concern would be, okay, how do we get farmers to really utilize this or be more um, or have a penchant for it, right? Or affinity to digital solutions. I think the integration is would be um, the way you integrate your solution would matter, because if you understand your landscape, probably you prefers like an SMS based, opportunity, then it means that you need to kind of integrate that. There might be aspects where you focus on doubling down on your training, and getting farmers to be able to measure this, or you start off with having field workers that actually do this in partnership with setting farmer groups or farmer networks, right? In order to measure what's going on the land with emissions or with soil health, or even just generally mapping out what's going on around
Mm-hmm.
um, the land and what other practices that are being adopted. So it's not been so hard because we understand the kind of farmers we're dealing with or the kind of landscapes
Right.
and what it will take to actually integrate them. So far this is the way we've been looking at it. We need to be able to measure impact. We need to be able to accelerate on that. And we've started looking at the various means in which we'll be able to get setting farmer networks to be a part of it, and we will address it with each farmer's concern. And so far we've come up with solutions that would be able to support that.
Hmm. Okay. Awesome. I mean, sounds like your team has is figuring it out or has already figured it out. But yes, I mean, I'm happy to hear about that. Um, Once again, when you look at the demography of farmers that you currently work with, what does the high level ratio look like? I'm talking because, I mean, there's a high percentage of, you usually find older generation of people compared to maybe young people. I don't know how that looks like within the Ghanaian landscape, and maybe you would like to throw more light on that. My worry for this question is just around how can we get more young people to be involved in sustainable farming, because again, people this generation don't like to get their hands dirty. I don't know, maybe that could be one of the misconceptions, but how do we start to introduce young people to sustainable farming or climate smart farming, as we like to call it? But from starting now from what that looks like within your own farming network,
Hmm.
where do you see us getting to in terms of encouraging more young people to be part of this, not just a conversation but actually
Mm-hmm.
do the work?
Mm-hmm. Actually, do the what? That's a brilliant question. I really like, for me, when I hear about like back to what we've been talking about, the farm of the
Mm-hmm.
future. I think
Mm-hmm.
farming or the farm of the future should definitely
Mm-hmm.
be led by the youth,
Right.
and it should be the foundation on which any farming system would thrive, really, because aside, we all know the exuberance you'd bring, the ambition we have,
Mm-hmm.
how innovative, daring, and we're geniuses. I mean, I hope we know that. So it's in terms of like really getting us to look at the agriculture industry as a whole. I think we need to start like, for me personally, I think I'm hoping that such conversations we're having would travel
Mm-hmm.
far and near, eh,
Right.
to encourage and inspire other youth who don't even like have an idea of where to start
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
which sector to support, would be encouraged to do so by listening to podcasts and to
Mm-hmm.
various conversations that we would
Mm-hmm.
have, or fireside chats. I'm hoping that as well they would be willing to get into nature, right? I think there's a lot that nature provides, and also pull the technology aspect, which we love, social media, the phones, the gadgets, the drones, IoTs, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
into in, into nature activities, right? How do we
Mm-hmm.
integrate that? And I think there's so much opportunity for us to do that, and that's even another reason why we looked at the digital solutions, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that there'll be a lot of innovation from youth that would actually encourage them to support um, and provide solutions to the
Mm-hmm.
challenges that the agriculture sector holds. I think another way is to really, really have more demonstrations and let's say exchanges, like bring more
Mm-hmm.
people into
Right.
to farmland, so that they realize that it's no more the archaic hoe
Mm-hmm.
and shovels and
Mm-hmm.
machetes and whatnot. But now there's a lot of
Yeah,
um,
machines.
yes, machine software, very
Mm-hmm.
easy to use and navigate
Mm-hmm.
systems
Tools. Yeah.
once you learn them to be able to grow large acreage or help you predict your yields or
Mm-hmm.
support you diagnose pests and diseases, etc.
Mm-hmm.
um I think it would start from conversation, it would start from mentoring, it would start from hands-on activity, right? And demystifying a lot of what people think farming is, what it
Right.
should be, etc. And I think today there should be no reason why um, um, a youth should not have a job, because I think farming is an excellent opportunity once you have, whether you have land or a pot
Mm-hmm.
or whatsoever, to enter and tap into, and then create more lucrative business for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
which helps you get the money, which I think every youth is kind of excited about.
Sure, true.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
that's what I have
definitely
to
agree.
say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Thank you for sharing. We need to have a lot more of these conversations. We need to um, find a way to shift our conversation or our message and communication to now make agriculture look like a much more important aspect of life, just so that we can encourage more young people or younger generation to be now part of doing the actual work, not just even like talking. um, so yes, just being mindful of time, because we've at least, I'm happy that we've been able to cover like some key aspects of this conversation. But just as part of the round of questions, I'd like to just get your thoughts around carbon farming, maybe from some of the activities that you've done previously, what you're currently doing, or what you're thinking of doing. Um, in terms of when you get the farmers that you work with to adopt, some of these sustainable practices, whether it's on water conservation, whether it's on soil health, or just general regenerative practices, what do you think? And from those activities that they do, the effort that they're putting, um, what do you think will be a fair compensation for the efforts that it puts into actively reducing or removing a lot of the carbon that we have around us or in the atmosphere?
Um, Honestly, I think um, climate change affects everybody,
Right.
right? S- Great or not, small or big, and climate change in Nigeria is just as adversely impacting as climate change in Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we're able to solve it in Ghana, it means that most likely we should be able to solve it in Kenya or
Mm-hmm.
Malawi or Nigeria, once we're able to create the systems in place. I think in terms of how I think we could get them to be aligned with carbon farming and the impact it has. I think I think it can be through the incentives, could be through non-financial resources, financial
Mm-hmm.
resources, right? Um, I think inputs, right? or
Right.
so,
We don't talk about
um,
that enough.
yes, inputs is a big deal. We
Mm-hmm.
need to put more carbon in the ground. Because carbon is food for the soil, right? So the more they do it, the more they're building soil capital, enriching biodiversity, improving water retention, and then they begin to see that, look, my yields are better,
Mm-hmm.
my soil looks healthier, etc. Right? It could also be through the opportunity to have additional income, whether it's accessing a loan facility or being able to receive the money that can actually
be that they could save for a rainy day, for instance, in case they have
Mm-hmm.
a flooding or a a drought or whatnot, right? But if they realize that my me adopting this practice, and if we're able to heighten the sense of belonging and ownership to this practice and say that, look, it, this is something that benefits you, will benefit the next community, next farmer in whatever region there is, and whatever you do here affects another person, then they would start to embrace, the topic of carbon farming or regenerative agriculture in general. I think the financial aspect is also really cool, right? For instance, I give the example of cocoa.
Mm-hmm.
Farmers that produce cocoa do not make good enough money,
Mm.
right? But other people within the value chain are making millions and
Right.
thousands and hundreds of thousands. So
That's
for me,
very so.
I feel I feel like some sort of repatriation. Farmers could receive the financial
Yeah.
resources, right? If they need maybe thousands instead of hundreds to be able to build a regenerative farm. Yes, then because of that practice, then it's door opening for them, right? That money helps them to do right by the environment, and it
Right.
allows them to scale and keep being excited, since they are not hindered, rather they are being supported and assisted, right? If they begin to see that, there's a lot of support for them in various, in cash, in kind, um in capacity building, whatever, i think I think they would they'll start to own it even more, and then now we wouldn't even have to think of creating market systems or voluntary markets or compliance markets to be able to get people to adopt green practices.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I completely agree with you. So just I guess I promise you we just have two more questions before we wrap up. I really
Ooh.
don't want us to end, but yes, to be honest, like I wanted to ask like follow-up questions, but I guess I'm just being mindful of time so that we're able to at least touch around like multiple areas. But
Mhm.
just this one and then a final one. So in your work again, I don't know if this might come off as a barrier, but have you ever had any sort of I guess clash with some of the communities, especially when you now go like down to the grassroots to remote communities. There are obviously like certain gatekeepers
Mhm.
around, some, government agencies that, would double as maybe tax forces. I mean, we get that a lot, in some of our community engagements and whatnot. And then that sort of
Right.
stops or stops, us from making progress with regard to some of the programs that we're looking to launch in those communities. So
Mhm.
speaking around how do we start to um, have these conversations and get it to the ears of I guess decision makers in high level places like obviously the government and whatnot. So I don't know if this question would come as a twofold, but yes, maybe what are some of the biggest barriers that you faced when you're trying to take your work down to the grassroots communities and
Mm.
districts? Have you ever had any of those challenges? And then uh, on now the government side, has there been any sort of support that you've
Mm.
received from, I guess, making things easier for you to penetrate some of those remote communities where you can have
Mhm.
access to the farmers or people that you would eventually serve?
Right. I mean, that's a very good question. And I think first of all, I'll start off and say that, victory doesn't happen without opposition in the first
Of
place.
course.
So for me, when I started to feel like this opposition, which we've encountered on several occasions.
I
But
can
for
imagine.
me, yes, for me, it just means that, okay, we now need to be unrelenting. We just need to get back to the drawing board and really understand what is not being said, what is the culture of the community that we're not understanding to enable us to enter or have more warm community entry for us. And I think, I mean, I started off Sabin Saki in a community that I didn't understand their language. And still till today, I still don't, but I'm learning, just to say. And it took, so imagine somebody speaking a different language, you speaking a different language. How are they supposed to understand why you're here and why they should listen to you? Right. So for me, it took a while, and I think patience is also one of the things as entrepreneurs. But it also took strategy where we were just intentional about understanding the culture, the dynamics of the situation, really sitting down to provide opportunity for collaboration, win-win situations, right? So that communities don't think you're there to exploit, because they've also experienced
Right.
they've also had a bit of trauma and experience whatnot, where people come in, say all sorts, makes all sorts of
Mm-hmm.
promises and never deliver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect is just proving yourself, right? Sometimes um I also make sure that we're starting off truly with a good intention, right? And being serious about that, because what happens is eventually they see that yes, you're here not to take but to give, right? Or give and
Mm-hmm.
take. And I think another aspect has been with um making sure that all the various stakeholders you can map out and say, okay, yeah, the assemblies are involved, the police is involved, all the community elders, the chiefs, and really just laying out the blueprint of your strategy or mission to them, right? And transparently doing that, and then and laying out the win-win benefits or opportunities there are,
Mm-hmm.
and then giving them the opportunity to say yes or no or maybe, right? Sometimes
Right.
yes, the door is locked and they say no, we won't open. But
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing is true: as entrepreneurs, we never do give up. So it's more of like
That's
knocking again and saying, oh, we're back again, are you ready? Oh no, okay. One day they would begin to see
mm-hmm.
the goodwill that you're creating in another community, and then before you realize, it's like, oh yeah, avalanche of responses, positive responses here and there. I think the other part is really ensuring that farmers are at the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, and that's why I also became a farmer, because I really wanted to experience what it meant, and
Mm-hmm.
also be able to be a voice and amplify
Mm-hmm.
that voice at setting
Mm-hmm.
tables that a
Yeah.
lot of us are not able to show up at.
Yeah.
So if we're able to penetrate through those corridors and be at the helms of policy making, decision making,
Mm-hmm.
where we're making sure that our voices are heard, we're there when they're making decisions,
Mm-hmm.
they will start to realize that yes, we can't take these decisions or rule you out, right? So it's very important, for instance, at the cops and all that, they talk about farmers, but you can count the number of farmers that are there, right? So it's important that once they're there, they're able to speak for themselves and say what matters, such that now the governments hear it, the
Yes.
regulatory bodies, compliant bodies hear it, and they realize that this is these are voices that can't be shut, and we have to hear it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's also another approach, and that's also something that I'm being intentional about as a farmer, making
Mm-hmm.
sure I represent them, share their
Yeah.
voices as one, and then also make sure that all the stakeholders, right, whether government, national, regional level,
Mm-hmm.
get to understand and hear the need for them to embrace some of the practices and activities that need to be meted out in these communities. So I think that for me has been the approach and the routes that we've seen work, and we hope that it becomes easier as we go.
Yeah, and I mean, I share in that as well. Hopefully, that they start to, hear us and also, I guess, put their money where their mouth is, and yeah, make the relevant steps or action that we need to, I guess, make progress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this has really been a lovely and insightful conversation. Unfortunately, we do need to go, but yes, hopefully that we will touch base soon, and also have you come back for another, I guess, insightful conversation in the near future. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
we really do appreciate and honor your presence here, and thank you so much for sharing all that you shared. Thank you so much for the educative side of this conversation that you've just opened our eyes to. Yes, one final question, as I promised, before we go. So, if there's one key takeaway that you want every farmer, every stakeholder, again, government, community leaders, policymakers, and just people who have their own agricultural businesses or agro businesses, if it's one thing that you want them to leave with this conversation today, what would that be?
Um, I think I would. There's a lot to say, but I would
Right?
just,
Yeah,
yeah, I
as,
would
as
say
short as it can be.
collaboration. Yes, I'd say collaboration is key. I would say that working with nature to
Mm-hmm.
achieve the yields um and volumes we need for food production is key. And then I would say the third thing is let's value farmers, the work that they do. Let's ensure that the agriculture sector is one that um, is creating the most wealth for countries, especially in Africa. It's invested in, um, and let's look at ensuring that we can also engage the youth and involve them at every aspect to,
Mm-hmm.
especially within the agriculture sector, and encourage them to actually be the drivers of the change that we want to see. So, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here as well.
I
And
mean, I can thank you
yeah,
too.
thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was really profound. I guess everybody would hear who listens to this. And so, yes, thank you so much once again for gracing our stage. We don't take your time and the work that you do for granted, and we will continue to collaborate and support each other the best way that we can. And to everyone who would listen to this conversation that we've had today, thank you in advance, and I hope that you learn a lot, and I hope that you've taken away so much from the essence of this discussion today. Um, One thing that I'd like everybody to do, if you get to the spot, is to look out for our um, the content. Also supports Sabin Sake and Audrey and the beautiful
Whoop
work
whoop.
that she's doing in Ghana. And then, yeah, so we'll just be around to cheer each other. But yes, thank you so much. And we'll would call it a day on this conversation. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good one. Blessings. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Udo.